we're a company that's made of real people, and we're all about real food. And we are committed to making a difference in the world and leaving it better than we found it, and bringing life and balance. That's what we're all about. So before we get started, I just thought we could take a moment and just take a breath, be in the space. Anything that happened before you entered this room, you can leave behind. Anything that's going to happen afterwards can wait. Today, you'll hear personal stories from a curated panel of heart-centered women who've made conscious choices each day that align with their purpose. You'll walk away with actionable insights and inspiration that you can take with you into your own life. While you're here, meet and connect with others in this community who are living their purpose. And if that's you, make sure you share that with others as well. Listen to the challenges and struggles of their journey and hear the whys of what inspired and motivated them to be a business owner, an educator, an entrepreneur, a changing agent, and an innovator. Now I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. And if you can just give a little sigh. So really nice of you. Gina Caputo. She's like steps out. So I was going to give a longer introduction and shorten it and let you all do that when we. Gina is the founder of the Colorado School of Yoga and On the Loose, and she's been teaching yoga for over 19 years and is a Kansas City gal. So we're happy to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. Sarah Kuchera. And Sarah is the founder of the Sage Center for Yoga and Arts in Crossroads, and she's been doing that for 11 years. The Sage Center is for health, and it's built on the foundations of Ayurveda and yoga. She'll talk more about that as well. Maybe. Or not. Robin Klaus. So, welcome, Robin. Robin is the founder of Unbakery and Juicery in Brookside. And she has something fun coming up, a new venture, which is no surprise. This launching this year. Oh, okay, we'll hear more about that too. Somebody asked a question.
A few surprises.
Yeah, a few surprises. Yeah. And then Celestine Mohammed. Steen. Steen is the founder of A Piece of Yoga. She's been doing that since 2012 and has also with her daughter, so in Kansas City and in Dallas. So I look forward to hearing more about that as well. And our last panelist is Meredith McAllister. And Meredith is the founder of Mod Wellness and Compost Collective KC. She's a holistic health coach, yoga instructor, wellness consultant, and world traveler, and entrepreneur. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm just so you know how this will all go. I have 2 questions that I'm going to start with, and I'm going to ask, and each one of them will take a moment and answer the questions. And after that, I'm going to open it up to you all. So, what did you hear? What do you want to hear more about? And we can just have a dialogue, and I'll kind of help through that. And then we'll see how we're doing on time. So I believe we have till 4:15 to do that. So I'll try and keep time that way for everyone, and we'll go from there. And this is a really great opportunity, for us all to be part of probably a much bigger discussion than we even know, because we have so many capabilities as one individual as we inspire each other. So the first question that I wanted to put out there really is, so was there an aha moment in your journey that you said, I am aligning with my purpose, or that moment where you can't not do that thing? It's so powerful that it's pulling you. Or was it you woke up one day and you'd been doing it, and then there was a very grounded intention as you moved forward? So think a little bit about that. share your story, maybe a little bit more about, what you're currently doing and what you're up to, and we'll kind of move through that. So whoever wants to start, I don't want to necessarily go in line, but whoever feels compelled to start, we'll go from there.
I can start.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. So I'm Sarah, and as she was saying, I own Sage Center for Yoga and Healing Arts, which does have a common thread of Ayurveda, which is, if you're not familiar with Ayurveda, it's also called the sister science to yoga. So it's sort of like the medicinal side that partners with yoga and does a lot with herbs and lifestyle changes to help you be healthier, especially while you're on your more spiritual path. I feel like I'm the example of the person that sort of just woke up and said like, oh, well, I'm doing what I'm doing. I never really questioned. In fact, comments from my parents, like, what are you going to do with that? Like, just like, anytime I'm interested in doing something, I'm just going to pursue it. I never really think about, I never overthink that. So, yeah, I never really, was in a career where I felt like I needed to make a switch, which I feel kind of fortunate that I just, dove right on in. And I think that that's really how my entire practice came to be. So Sage is really a combination of a lot of the things that I studied, even though we've brought on a lot of other practitioners with us. So as soon as I become interested in something, then kind of learning about it. And I feel like a purpose in my life is really to be a teacher. So even if I'm studying something for myself, in some way that eventually gets woven in some manner. Super brief.
I can follow Sarah a little bit in the fact of, so I have a few things that are going on. Compost is definitely one of the biggest things right now. But as Alicia mentioned, I'm a holistic health coach, so I have a business with that. And then I'm also working right now on launching a natural wine program. And it's like these three things that feel very different, but there's a common thread in all of them. And I'm really passionate about the earth, small producers, and having the best quality of food that you can get. And so that's really the common theme. I'm passionate about all of these things, and so I've just generally been pursuing them, and then eventually something happens or a conversation happens and something just clicks and you make a connection that you pursue, and I'm just going to do this, and then a month or 6 months down the road it's like a thing. With compost specifically last year, it was very actually abrupt in that I was a subscriber of the service when I lived in Boston 5 years ago, and I thought, oh, this would be a really good thing to start, and had always thought it had been in the back of my mind. I'd had a corporate job, and thought, don't have enough time now. Then last summer, I was getting really, really mad, really frustrated that I didn't feel like the politicians were doing enough about the environment. And I felt personally they were just taking steps backward. It's well, fine, if they're not going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And so I sent out feelers to people around me. Would you be interested in something like this? And felt that I had enough support around me and did it. So I think that there's a balance. There's some things that just kind of naturally flow and happen, and then there are other things where you have to be that person that just does it. So
I can go next. Mine is a little different. I think mine was, I hit rock bottom. I had 5 businesses going, no management, a little management, but coffee shop management. I had no gym. I was the food runner, the baker, the manager. I did everything. And I ended up getting really sick. I had adrenal fatigue. I had systemic candida. You name it, I had it. I had hyperthyroidism. I had lumps in my breast. I had so much. And I was in and out of the doctors for about 4 years. And nothing. I got nothing. So I actually went to Sage about 5 years ago to see Abby Miller, health coach. Amazing. And she was gone. But I remember them at the desk saying, well, she might be leaving us. We're looking for a health coach if you know of anybody. And I thought, I might just check that out. So I did end up doing health coaching, herbal apprenticeship, just trying to find my own way through the system. Fired all of my doctors, tried every diet in the world, from raw vegan to everything. Studied 100 different diets, self-healed, self-motivated, and then I just decided to get it out there. My dad died of a heart attack, and I just sold everything. I just let it all go and just took a year off and studied everything, and still will study forever, probably. I will be in a class or a school or something forever. That's what I'd love to do. And then teach and motivate other people to not listen and know your body before you let somebody else tell you what's wrong. And how to listen to your body, how to support yourself before someone tells you the wrong thing or can't help you. And a lot of people, like myself, they wait until it's too late to get that help or to get into that school or, so my job, hopefully, is to get people interested before it gets to that point.
So Steen is what everybody calls me. And so I teach yoga, and I started practicing yoga probably like in 2010, actually maybe in 2008, because my kids were still in college, and we had kind of like a major crisis happen in the family, and I know that yoga was benefiting me, and it was kind of giving me that calm, that quiet, and I got my daughter involved. She was in her maybe sophomore year at KU. Anyway, through a turn of events, and she and I practicing yoga. I never thought about teaching, but when you look around the room, like if you look now, there wasn't anybody who looked like me. And I wasn't even really worried about that. I just wanted to know more about yoga. So my daughter wrote a paper in her, she was in the KU School of Business, and her paper was on a piece of yoga. And her ideal was that we would go to different locations and teach yoga. We would never do brick and mortar. We would always be in community. We would always go out. And I started taking yoga teacher training, but I really didn't think I was going to go and teach. I just thought that was a nice paper, and I thought it was a really nice idea. And people kept asking me all through yoga teacher training, like, oh, so what are you going to do with that? Because I've been in a career for over 30 years, so I really didn't know. I just thought I wanted to know more about yoga. I just wanted to understand it better, So eventually I did start teaching yoga, and I was offered like several teaching jobs in different studios, and I would go. But my heart was with community, and I could not get my community, number one, to pay the kind of cost that it would be for a monthly, some people will do it, but really the people that need it most don't have, that type of income or resources. So as a result, I just kind of had to start finding my way into places that really more aligned with what I said I wanted to do. Like I wanted to get it into the community, so I had to go to the community. And I lost my brother years ago to violence on the streets in St. Louis. I never thought anything, I really didn't think about that so much. I just look at the trauma that the African American community specifically is going through. It's like an epidemic. And some kind of way I made connection with Mothers in Charge, and that's for mothers who have lost their kids to violence in the streets in Kansas City. And I think that's when I knew I was in the right place, because they were very receptive to it, and you really have to build relationship with people to trust you to come in like that and share a practice of something that and it's really a challenge, because in the African American community, yoga is like, first off, you're supposed to be a Christian, you're supposed to be going to church, and all that stuff they're teaching you is like, woo, And so like trying to make it like simple. So that became my goal, was to kind of like demystify yoga. And I don't use really any Sanskrit. And I try to use just basic terms. I do teach a regular Sunday soul session out of my husband's martial arts studio. So on Sundays, I have a good community of women predominantly that come out from church, or, I have Jewish, I have a very good diverse group that comes out on Sunday, then we all kind of practice in community. And I have Muslim women, and it's just a good, safe space. So my intention just kind of kept growing, it went into why African Americans weren't practicing. So there's the whole body image, and then there's the religious side of it. And then there's just a lot of different things that led me in different directions. And so it's like you can't be everything to everybody, but I feel a responsibility to be the best I can for the most people that I can. So consequently, I've studied yin yoga and prenatal yoga. So now I go into Uzazi Village down on Truce. And I will say, like, after all these years of teaching yoga, I feel like I'm at home now. Because this woman at Uzazi Village is taking young African American women that are pregnant and saying, this is your body, you own it. She's empowering them to understand that they have a right when they see their doctors, they have midwives, they have doulas. And she's also doing some very nice ritual work of renewing them of their sense of self. And it's that feeling of, okay, now I'm at home. So I'm helping to shepherd in new life that's going to have a much better sense of self and who they are. And it doesn't go without challenge, but it's really what's on my heart.
I'm really grateful to this whole panel and for you starting us off with that question, because I think what's beautiful about all of these stories is that finding your way into like alignment with your purpose or your dharma, you might say, or that which drives your soul, is sometimes something that you do quite intentionally, and other times it's a result of like just being open to possibility, staying open and curious. And so I'm really grateful. You can see it wasn't like from 17, we were all planning that this is exactly what we were going to do. So that's just sort of how it happens, I think, and I love these examples. For me, I was like a computer programmer, building websites like before, your dog could build one. It had to be a person who knew computers. And I was doing that and practicing some yoga, and it all happened really quite accidentally, where the other teachers were all like fitness instructors, and they were leaving for a weekend to go get some CEUs, and there was nobody left. They were all like body pump teachers and stuff, so there was nobody left to teach yoga, and Laura was there. That's how long we've been friends. And they were like, well, you're always here, and you're kind of a big mouth. Like, will you just teach this weekend? And I did have that reflection where I was like, I do come a lot, and I know what they say to do, and I think I get the vibe of it, and I'm not shy, so sure. So I put on the headset, and I remember it was like, let's sit tall. Inhale your arms up and exhale twist. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a total accident, and it was like a favor. And I loved it. I've never wanted to be a teacher. It was like a favor. And it was like, oh, this is fun. You sort of feel like this energetic conductor, And I enjoyed it, but I had another job. And anyway, when they came back, they got some positive feedback, and I ended up staying on the schedule. And then I was like, oh, I really like this. And then just kind of juggled those two things. Then fast forward, I was studying with a teacher in LA, and this is an example of that, like, you're not planning it, stay open to possibility. And my teacher in LA was opening a center. He really needed someone with business experience. So he called me up one day. Do you guys remember when we had that really gnarly ice storm? It was during that. So of course I remember it because it was like surreal, where I'm having this call that will change my life, and the ice storm had just happened. And all the trees were down. Anyway, Max said, when are you moving to LA? And I said, well, never, I hope. And he said, I'm opening this center, I'd love your help, maybe for like 6 months. Fast forward, I did go and do that, and it was supposed to be for 6 months, and it ended up being almost 2 years. But that was an example of like, oh, I'll say yes so I can be of service just briefly, and then get back here. So the funny thing that happened, I think it's funny now to like laugh at myself, and I'm sure we all have stories where we were so sure about something that then doesn't go that way at all, is I came back from those years in LA, and I was at like arguably one of the most beautiful yoga studios that existed. So before I left, I had bought the VFW building in Blue Springs, Missouri. And, you know, for like $10 or something. And, so when I came back, of course, I had this idea that like, I'm gonna make the most beautiful yoga studio in Blue Springs, Missouri. And I have to tell you, I look back on that now and I'm like, oh, Gina. Just so adorable that like, I projected, and this is to like any of y'all, like I projected onto my community what I liked and what I wanted, which was yoga and this glorious sanctuary space. I made all these projections, and the truth is, with a few exceptions, they're just like, nah, I'm good at all American fitness. And I can't tell you, I dropped my life savings on this studio. It really was the most beautiful studio. It's not as beautiful as Sage, but close. But this studio I thought was glorious, and there were so many days. There's a woman who's not here, unfortunately, because she moved away. Her name's Jan Adams. I can't tell you how many days it was me and Jan. Jan and me. Me and Jan. Jan and me. Me and Jan. And here I'm thinking it's going to be like LA. And even my classes at the gym had a ton of people, and it was just me and Jan. Jan and me. I remember the one day I was like, Jan, can we just go for a walk today? Because I was just like, what have I done? What have I done? And I'd go have bagels with my husband and cry about the, what have I done? It's the worst. Oh, God. And anyway, then you got to play the long game. And that would be like my little bit of advice right there is, that was the beginning, and I had projected onto this community, and I had these expectations of my community and didn't really like investigate, like, do you actually want this? And so it made it really challenging. Now by playing the long game, eventually became the whole Field of Dreams thing. And then there were some days, remember in those lunar classes, there'd be days where it was just like packed. I mean, that's kind of a miracle in Blue Springs, because definitely there was like all the local reverends and stuff were like, she's doing Satan's work. By the way, I'm your helper right here. I'm helping people become like more aware and connect with their spiritual lives. But be that as it may, I learned so much, but also shed a million tears. Then opened a second studio in the Crossroads, and fast forward, I'll skip over all kinds of stuff. But there's phases to these big things. The way that first of all, I should give a shout out. Colorado School of Yoga wasn't always Colorado School of Yoga. It was Kansas City Yoga, which is another entrepreneur's to be huge mistake. I thought I was so clever. City, S-I-D-D-H-I, those special superpowers you get from yoga. Nobody understood what the hell that was. And I would get checks written to Kansas Shitty Yoga. Why would I name my business Shitty? So I eventually moved to Colorado and couldn't exactly keep Kansas Shitty Yoga. So I was actually, this is like true stories, is I was also at that point, this is many years later of having Kansas Shitty Yoga for a long time, and then, so at least a decade later, I was like ready for a break, which I'm sure everybody here can relate to, where you're just kind of like, T.O. So when I moved to Boulder, I was like, I will not be responsible for anything except myself. And that's going to be such a relief. And I remember then, this is a hard thing about entrepreneurship, it's hard to go back. So all of a sudden I was like, I don't want to work for I don't want to be the boss, I want to work for somebody else. And at first, you know, for the first little bit, it was like, yeah, this is what I was talking about. And then you're just like, oh God, I wouldn't do it that way. Oh God, I wouldn't do it that way. And, you know, then you're just like, I can't do this anymore. So then we had this woman in Denver who felt like, this is now, again, years have gone by, this woman in Denver, Denver is where core power yoga started, and that became obviously this huge influential power yoga chain. And they were cranking out, I don't know how many teacher trainings a year. And so this woman in Denver, who was not part of that, was getting concerned that there were just like a teacher machine. And Core Power wasn't the only one, they were just the biggest one. And so she felt like that was a problem. Now, I agree with that problem, just for the record. But I would not solve it the way she did. I'd be like writing the press or something. But instead, she decided to give a list of everyone running teacher trainings to the Department of Private Occupational Schools and said, you should regulate them. Now, everyone in this room knows how diverse yoga is. And when I say diverse, I'm talking stylistically diverse, right? So there's Bikram, there's Vinyasa, there's Yin, there's prenatal, there's all these things. Like, how are you gonna regulate that? And so at that point, that had happened here in Missouri to anyone that was around in those days. And we tried to fight the state and lost. So I was already like bitter from that and like escaped to Colorado where they didn't do it, and then they were gonna do it. And so I was just like, no. So this is where the Colorado School of Yoga kind of came into being. Is we fought the state, and this time like for real, like we're down at the Capitol testifying and saying all the reasons. Like it was gonna put all of these independent women, who owns little studios? Like 99% are women. And it was gonna put us out of business because you couldn't afford the regulation, which wasn't regulating quality. It was regulating like, how many square feet do you have per person to do? It's like, you don't even know what training is. It's not like a truck driving school or something, you know? So this woman, this is like how delicate it is whether you're doing your life's work or not. I was just tootling along, like hiking every damn day, yay! And then Sandy changed my whole life into like, now you need to decide. We won, so the state can't regulate us, but that doesn't remove the problem that we still have like essentially puppy mills of yoga teachers. So then it was like, okay, state, not the right answer. I could dedicate my life to like taking down all the studios that do this, or more positive, try to create the alternative. And that's how the Colorado School of Yoga, so kind of like a later chapter of this work came into being, is I'm not gonna be able to stop Core Power, certainly not alone, but what happens when everybody just goes, all of us independents go, it's too much, I can't, then all of these independents will go away, and then you'll have no choice. It's like, just like anything, restaurants, Walmart, you know what I mean? It's like, then there will be no choices. So that's how the Colorado School of Yoga was born, and our tagline is elevating yoga education, and it's really meant to provide a learning path and a learning community for people that maybe want more than the quickie, fitness-focused yoga practice or yoga education. And you know what, the realization I've come to now after all of these years of doing this is there's a real difference. Like, we don't, in this industry, and I suspect for some of us also up here, is that your salary, as in like what you report on your 1099 or your W-2, like, is not very high. But I've also started to really appreciate the importance of what I always call like your soul salary. You know, so it's like I can't pay the bills with it, but it also, you said, or did you, or some, you said something like, when was the moment that you realized you couldn't not do it? And I think that's really what it boils down to. I've been the person with the cubicle-based career, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that unless you're doing a lot of like great extracurriculars, you may feel a little bit of this like soul withering. And I still cry and scream and get frustrated and feel like the challenges are insurmountable. And quite frankly, right now, I'm struggling with the fact of the like kind of lackadaisical attitude on teachers' behalves about like not being interested in learning more. But that's another case of projection. I have like a voracious appetite for learning more and more and more, and I assume so does everybody. Because if you already have 60 people in your class, why learn more? You know, and that's how it is there. I mean, I know not everybody has 60 people, but that's at like 2 p.m. there's 60 people. Like, what are you doing? But anyway. It's like a struggle all the time, and I definitely contemplate this idea of like, should I just open that sandwich food truck? Or keep doing this? And ultimately, last thing I'll say, I promise, but I keep looking at the big picture, and you said something about this too. This is like knowing your why is essential, because every single day I question, do I want to keep doing this? Is this worth it? I make no money. I'm always tired. Everything is challenging. Maybe people don't care. Maybe I'm projecting too much, blah, blah, blah. The only thing that keeps me on track is really my why. And I feel that this practice, yoga, that is we are in tumultuous times, as y'all know. I don't need to tell you that. People are going through stuff of all natures, you know what I mean? Health-wise, social justice-wise, politically, like in every possible arena. And I feel when we look at like suicide being at its all-time high in history right now, we can say, oh, mental health, yes, I'm not arguing that, but I think it's a feeling of despair and helplessness and a lack of inner resources. And I would never sell yoga as, yoga fixes everything. You'll never hear that come out of my mouth, but you also better believe that there are times when I call on like, something I've stayed in, or the awareness I cultivate in my practice or my meditation, I'll call on those things to make it through something hard. So that's like my why. I believe in the power of these tools to help everybody. You talked about with pregnant moms, like that, we need to get this. It's not for everyone, I get that, and I'm more careful about assuming everyone wants it now. But for those people for whom it works, I think, wouldn't you guys agree? It's an invaluable resource. It's like this little inner sense of self and capacity. Like, yes, you know, you hold forearm plank or something, that comes in handy when you're just like, you know. So that why stays super close to the forefront of my mind at all times. So when I doubt and struggle and get angry and all of that stuff, it's like, that's why. That's why. And then, you know, my soul salary remains high. But yeah, I said that was it, so.
It's inspiring, and I have another question for them, but I'm going to save it till like the end, so that we can kind of leave everyone. I've asked everyone to give kind of a gift as you leave to you all. So I'm going to open it up for questions, comments to individual women, or just to the whole group, to whoever wants to answer. So are there any specific questions or topics or things that you want to know or just have to bring up?
So one of the things I struggle with is I have too many ideas and I want to pursue them all. Constantly, the squirrel syndrome. So what do you... how do you get to the point where you know
I've
which one to
struggled with
focus
that forever, and when I sold all the 5 businesses, I was like, I'm going to do one thing, and that is it. And I'm going to be happy, because with all of that, I was really unhappy and really sick. So I found my one thing I wanted to do, and then all these other things kept popping up. And it got overwhelming again, and I went to a workshop. I actually catered the food for Abby Miller's workshop, and I thought, I've been doing this for like 12 years, I'm good, I don't need to stay. And I stayed because they, are you going to stay? And it's like, oh, yeah, I'll stay. I learned so much, and one of the things that I learned to do when I have all these ideas is make a list 1 through 12. Limit yourself to 12 if you can. Put them in order, important, least important, and then make like a chart, 4 squares. 1 through 4 first important, the other least important. And look at that like quarterly or yearly. Like the first year, you're going to accomplish these 4. Second year, you're going to move to the second. And that honestly, it was the best lesson I've learned in a long time. Because I wanted to be a pilot. I literally was like sitting up at night, like online, and I'm like, honey, how am I going to fit this into my schedule? And he's like, you are crazy. And literally, after Abby's event, I was like, oh shit, I got like 3 years to be a pilot. I'm good. That's what helped me, knowing what's important or what aligns with the other things. Like she said, I have a few surprises. I've been working on like an apothecary line for a year just take your time. Let it just flow, and it'll be good. It'll be much better. Don't rush it. I'm a bit impatient, so that was a huge learning lesson, is how to just let it go. And everything will just come together. Yeah, you'll be a pilot someday. Yeah, I have a million ideas, and I have 3 businesses I'm working on right now, but I don't let it get to me like it used to. You know, I'm way more laid back than I used to be. You know, like, oh, yeah, that'll happen. I'll meet you, in a few weeks.
Feels like a trust.
Yeah.
You have a calmness or a trust,
Yeah.
and that it will happen.
And I'm a big believer that it'll happen if it's supposed to happen. You know, if I finish this project, it's meant to be on the shelves. It's meant to open. It's meant to be.
Anything else?
I think it's also really valuable to, I think you've already identified yourself in this regard as knowing if you're someone that likes to start things, if you're the maintainer, or if you're the one that likes to see things to completion. And where you are comfortably in those ranges. Because if you look at that list of ideas and you know, like, I'm the ideas person, I'm not the maintainer, then you look at it far more realistically. Because think of like maintaining, even like, I'm thinking like 12 things, like, like to put the 12 things into a box seems like, that even seems a little overwhelming, and actually I feel like I'm someone that also has a lot of interests. But to me, that's like, if I have a new idea or something where it's like, I really want to learn about this, or I mean, because I think I'm a little bit like that. I never have wanted to be a pilot. But it really is helpful for me to know, like, I'm not the maintainer. I thrive in the beginning and the ending of things. And the in-between is a sure struggle for mine. And it's not to say that I'll just accept, like, I have an acceptance around that, but I'll then work with that idea that that's not my strong suit. But that also helps me in the other 2 aspects of things. Like, this is, I can't maintain 12 things.
Reach out, ask for help.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make connections, find people who can support you in that and can fill in the gaps in areas that you don't necessarily want to, or maybe somebody else is so much better, their strengths are different than yours, and make those connections and lean on them. And making a list, oh my gosh, yeah. Realize what is at the top of that list and then go after it. And then eventually come down to that second thing and third thing.
Well, I was just thinking, thank you, Gina. I was thinking about, like, there's so many people, like, when I was going through something like that, like, trying to think of, like, which direction I wanted to go in, and, you think everything has to be new and you have to do it. And what I started finding out was, like, maybe that's not necessarily in Kansas City, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people already out there doing almost anything you can imagine. And I think it's really important to find somebody that kind of aligns with what you want to do. And really, people that are already doing what you want to do and are confident in it, they're so generous, and they're willing to open up, and you can reach out to them. And I just sent an SOS to Gina probably 2 months ago, and good Lord. But there are people that are just really generous and are already out there doing stuff, and it can really save a lot of steps for you, because I was kind of going through that too, and I really did find myself like traveling all over, following like off the mat, like I did the off the mat into the world, and I kept getting this, just use your voice. People are waiting. And I met Gina, use your voice. And I'm like, people are waiting to hear your voice. I'm like, what is my voice? What does that mean? But there's people out there that are like in alignment with us, that need us to propel them or to support them. So there is some authenticity that, is within each of us, that there's enough for everybody, so.
Just quick, I would say trust also, like this idea of resonance. So I love all the techniques, this idea of putting them in a quadrant and all of that. But sometimes when I have a whole bunch of things that I need to choose from, I actually, and this does sound kind of woo-woo, but I've used it and it works. It's like, think about each one and literally notice how you feel in your body. And if you're really paying attention, something will have like a little more vibrancy than something else. It doesn't mean that those 11 other things are not valid or worth it, but I think we can let our minds override that intelligence that doesn't have as loud a voice, you know. But it's there if you just like.
So you talked about the soul salary, and I totally resonate with that. And so my question is, how do you prevent the soul salary from like overworking you? Because I have 3 jobs. I'm a physical therapist, a massage therapist, and a yoga teacher, averaging like 55, 60 hours a week because I just love it so much. But I'm so tired, and I don't want to let anybody down, like clients, students, patients, and I guess I'm just having a hard time that soul salary is more important to me than like my, I guess, everything else. And just helping and doing what I'm called to do. And so how do you balance that out to where you're not like neglecting your spouse and like, you know, overworking yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to hear what everybody has to say, but I'll just say, I feel like a tremendous hypocrite trying to answer your question, so I'm going to pretend I'm talking to myself right now and just say, this is what I try to remind myself of, is the work that I am privileged to do, which sounds, you know, like at least part of what you're doing, is I derive a lot of pleasure from it, you know, it makes me happy. And so one of the first things to go would be what one of my friends once called leisurely pursuits, meaning things that don't have anything to do with my work. And those are the first things to go because important work, you know, and I don't want to let anybody down either. And so it's really, I don't have any trouble working. Work, like no problem. I don't need any discipline to do that. I need it in the way you're asking about, which is around this whole idea of leisurely pursuits. And it sounds like these guys have more organized skills than I do, but I would say, like, you carve it in. So if it's like your partner, it becomes a priority. And then, so like for example, if I get asked to be at something, and it happens to be a time that I've already carved out to be with my husband at a bike race he's doing or something like that, I don't want to let people down, and oh, this would be so great, da, 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 da. But I have to be disciplined around that. And so there's I can't remember what the name of the book is or anything, but it's this idea that if you put yourself first, which even saying that out loud makes me feel a little bad, but if you put yourself first, so the first thing you do when you sit down and look at July is where are you putting the leisurely pursuits, the things with your partner, whatever, that goes in first. And then you put all of your appointments and sessions and all of that in. And it's not easy at all to do because you'll be like, oh, these are you know, maybes. They have to be just as much as any massage appointment, any yoga class or whatever. And the reason we have to, like our why for being disciplined around that is, you know, these wonderful things where we get the whole high soul salary. If you're not doing those leisurely pursuits, you end up eventually, maybe not you yet, but I'll fess up to it, like you end up resentful. You know, where it's like, is anyone here old enough to remember Depeche Mode? Thank you so much. There was a song, this is how I know my leisurely pursuits have gone by the wayside. One of their songs had, like, the chorus was, the grabbing hands grab all they can. When I hear that playing in my head, it's like, okay, somebody needs to step off and do something else because I'm starting to feel like, what more do you want from me? That's like, that drama is my fault because I didn't prioritize. So that'd be my advice. What do you guys think?
I think with me, I have to schedule in, like she said, you have to carve out that time, because I'm not gonna make you say, but I was there, you know, I was a people pleaser. I pleased everybody, you know, I would do anything for anybody, free caterings, I mean, I did it all, and I wore myself out, and I was in bed for months, so then I couldn't do any of those things for anybody. So I think taking care of yourself and carving out that you time will help you be better at your soul, salary. Right now, I have to just schedule in vacations, like book a trip. In 2 months, I'm going here, so I'm gonna work my ass off, but I have a goal. There's a light at the end of that tunnel, and if I don't have something booked, I'll go crazy.
Do you have anybody that helps hold you accountable?
My husband's pretty good at the carving out time part. But holds me accountable, not really. But I think I've been through enough to where I think I'm on the other side of it though. I think I'm being a little too chill about things now. Like I need to get back into, where I'm like, oh, it'll happen, So I probably should have someone hold me accountable. But on the vacations and the me time, no, I've got that down. And yeah, even if it's like a lake trip, something easy. There's a paddleboard here. But that'll do a lot for you.
Up here could easily be working 7 days a week.
Right now.
Sun's right out. Yeah, every moment, especially, and we've obviously our local are flight being busy, and we have our emails on our phones, and I love it. I tried to make Sunday be a day that is just nothing. Like there's no work. I know that my phone will buzz with emails, but I will not respond to them. Like that is just how it's going to be. And I definitely feel really guilty for just like taking time for myself, or for God forbid, letting a day go by before somebody gets an email response. And I've just kind of had to accept that that's going to be okay. The world will go on. Also, to what you said, I think knowing your worth is really important too. I think in the beginning, getting started, it's really easy to give everything away for free or for really cheap. So I think knowing you should charge enough. You should definitely be charging enough so that you can live the life that you want. And it's way easier, I think, said than done, because when it comes down to it, sometimes there are things that you just have to do. But that's always really good advice whenever somebody, know your worth. Like, oh, yeah, but and then, like, once you actually realize it.
You can also have a good network of people that you refer to. Is what I do. Like if I can't take another client or something, I'll refer them to somebody that I know has the passions and the knowledge I do.
I think I just took Gina's Finding Your Voice as a yoga teacher, and there was a lot of different dynamics in the training, and it's an online training. And one of the things that I took away from there is that you can't be everything to everybody. And if you really aren't able to support a person in that way, like be willing to pass them on, like you were just saying, like be willing to refer them on to someone else if you just can't do everything. And I think that that's a big growth to be able to do that, because you do want to do everything, and it feels good that people are coming to you, and maybe you're being referred, and that's so exciting. But so that you don't deplete yourself, or so that you don't feel overwhelmed. Because I know, like, I'm always getting somebody in now. More doctors are starting to send women and say, oh, you should practice yoga. Well, every yoga teacher does. I don't know everything for every illness. So it's like every Sunday I'm going home trying to look up something new so that I can be prepared for them when they come back. And it's just, I can't figure it all out, but I do try my best to be that for everyone. But then just through this course, it was really a good, strong message to be willing to let go in the past. Especially if someone is like on it and they know what they're doing, they can do it better than I can, and be more supportive of them. Because ultimately it's for the well-being of individuals.
Thank you. This conversation doesn't have to end here, but I am going to wrap it up and ask the last question. And I asked everyone to specifically think of one action item, a gift they can give to each of you when you walk out this door, so that you can take that next step to make a difference in the world. So at this time, you can do that in a as focused and concise way, so that, you know, we really have something. I wasn't talking to you.
Definitely not.
No, so, you know, obviously we talked a lot about, you know, all these ideas, but really like something that you truly like, there's just one thing. It's that, you know, one thing that you can give as a gift to this group that's here today in the conversation.
Mine would be mindful of everything. I tell my employees to, if somebody comes in and they're a complete ass and they're rude and disrespectful, like, you don't know what that person's going through, you know, make them super happy and you may change their entire world. You have no idea. But I really liked what Gina said, instead of making a list, like, think about how something's going to affect you as a person. Maybe be mindful of what your actions or how something's going to make you feel versus somebody else. And try to listen to your body more. Just be more in tune with it. Be mindful.
I'm a big proponent of making your day have a container so that it doesn't feel like things are just like all over the place. And a part of that for me, which I would recommend or suggest for you, is that you start the day the same way every single day, and that you end it the same way every single day, so that no matter where you are, like if you're traveling or you're visiting family or whatever it is, or even if it's not the same time, that you're able to have like the bookends to the day. And with regards to that helping you to align you with your purpose, that within that little routine that you've set up, to have one thing that you're doing that contributes to that, or contributes to whatever kind of a person you want to be, or the things that you want to be emphasized in your life.
One is super practical, says the owner of a curbside office. Eat your food. Eat what's in your fridge. It's like one of the littlest things that I think we can do, but we are not doing it at all. So eat the food that you have in your fridge or freeze it. That's a practical thing. Somebody said that.
Some of them I'm repeating, so that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So know your why, and then to echo you, know your worth. Like if you don't believe in the value of this thing you're doing, or you doing it like no one else is. So know your why, know your worth, know you're not alone, and this is to echo what you were saying about reach out. Like don't try to solve everything on your own, because there are people that would love to listen to what you have to say and help you. And then so why, worth, not alone, and then play the long game. Like these days, everybody wants instant gratification. I get it too. We're being conditioned to make things happen quickly. And when we're talking about the nature of service work, you gotta really see that sutra, that thread running for a long time before you may see the fruits. I don't think a lot of people peel off if they don't have that long vision.
And I would say probably two things. One is have personal practice, like even if that's not going to a studio, but I know that having that community is very supportive of being in harmony and the whole breathing and the whole practicing together is beautiful. But I learned that it's really important to have a personal practice, something that you can turn to. My other thing is that if you are even considering advocacy work, for me, I had gone to my first off-the-mat training, I think it was, where Sean Corn talks about before she practices every morning, she watches the news, and I thought, how depressing, you know? But if your work is in advocacy, that news in the morning really will spur you to your why and why you're needed. And in the work that I do, I can turn on that news anytime in Kansas City and you see there's another murder. You know, it'll propel you. So, I mean, as depressing as it seems, it affirms what I try to do.